Hi, this is Yield Prediction with Imagery and Moisture Manager for fall of 2019. I'm Ben Johnson. I'm a Regional Digital Ag Lead here at Farmer's Edge, and let's talk about some Imagery and Moisture Manager here. So this is my own farm in Northeast Iowa, and this was my 2018 yield map. We did 201 bushels per acre, which we felt was pretty good because it's a tough piece of ground. However, we didn't get this yield map until we harvested the field in October. And I've been an agronomist for many years, and I've always tried to do yield estimates to try to get an idea of what the yield is going to be, in August, this time of year. So what we're trying to cover today is how to use technology to come up with that number. So last year, what I did is I took our scouting map from Farmer's Edge, and I looked at it, and I felt like that's probably going to be pretty similar to what the yield map is going to look like. So I also isolated some areas in the field. Those are quicksand areas, and I wanted to get an idea of just how bad those bad parts were, because that can vary from year to year depending on how wet or dry it is later in the season, how much moisture that we have. So in that particular area, the bad areas are roughly 1.4 acres. So that's good information to know. I know there's in some areas it's been very dry, in other areas it's been extremely wet. So it's very good to know, get an idea, and handle on exactly how bad the bad parts are to set your expectations. So anyway, I was able to look at the worst areas out there, visually see it, and actually do a yield estimate out there. And if you're wondering, the bottom right-hand corner is what 25 bushel to the acre corn looks like. Not pretty. Anyway, so I went out and I did my yield estimates, and each one of these images, you can see I have the app open. You can see the little blue dot showing me where I was out in the field. And those are all the locations that I took my yield estimates from. So that was pretty handy. So I was looking for the good areas, the bad areas, and also the average areas. And when you're doing yield estimates in the past using zero technology, especially if you hadn't spent any time in that particular field all year, it can be kind of a tough thing to do, especially trying to figure out exactly where you are. So it's really kind of a guessing game. And so what we're trying to do with these pieces of technology is to really take as much of that guessing game out of it as possible. And so here's what my results were. So here's the different numbers from all the different spots that I visited. The high was 243 bushels to the acre. The low was 25 bushels to the acre. So there's kind of a wide variance out there, especially between the highest yielding and the lowest yielding. But as we look at the more average areas of the field, I have 208 bushels and then also 201 bushels, which is actually what the field average was 201 bushels. But anyway, so averaging all of those together, even though there are some outliers in there, 192 bushels to the acre is what I came up with. And so when we look at the actual yield map, 201 bushels to the acre, that's within 5%. So that's pretty good using imagery, and we get within 5%. That's being able to predict that 2 months ahead of time. That's pretty fair. But in certain areas of the country, or really North America, US and Canada, we've got a model built for predicting yield based on moisture. And what we're really basing that on is we're assuming that you've got all the rest of your bases covered. And so that would be, your fertility, seed selection, planting date, all of that good stuff is covered. And so that's what we're assuming here. So we're assuming moisture is the limiting factor, which in a dry area of North America like this, it typically is the limiting factor. So how we're going about this is we're looking at the available water, how much water is available to the crop, and we're subtracting a base amount, and so that's derived from local climate, precipitation, and temperature. So here's the minimum water required to sustain the crop. And then we're also using water use efficiency. So we're using university values on crop-specific values where every inch of water results in X amount of bushels and all that good stuff. So here's what we do. We go out, we take a soil sample at the beginning of the season when we install the probe, and we see how much water is in the soil, what is in the bank, so to speak. And then we take and we use the weather station data throughout the course of the year, and we see, okay, this is how much rain has fallen. And then we also subtract water losses from runoff or deep drainage and all that stuff. So we're seeing how much comes in, how much goes out, how much flows out. And then we're also giving a prediction on how much rain is likely to fall over the rest of the growing season. So these are the factors that are going in. And so as we look at the yield prediction here, so we look at, okay, so T1 today, so that's in the middle of the screen here, and we're looking at all the different wetting events and the water uptake throughout the course of the year. And then we're projecting out into the future a line, okay, this is what we can expect for normal precipitation throughout the rest of the year, and we're giving a yield number based on that. And then the wet line, which is the light blue, that is the 80th percentile of average rainfall. So it's, you know, of the past 30 years, this is the number that is at the 80th percentile. And then on the dry, that is at the 20th percentile of rainfall. And so you'll get 3 different numbers there. And as the season progresses, as you get closer to the end of the season, those numbers are going to get tighter and tighter together. So obviously, if you have 2 months left in the growing season, that might be pretty wide. But then as you get, you know, within 3 days of the yield cutoff, you're going to be pretty tight in there, just based because our weather forecasting ability is a lot better 3 days out versus 2 months out. And so that's what we do there. So that gives you an idea of maybe marketing possibilities, kind of gives you an idea of a range, what to expect. And so also as we dig into Moisture Manager here, you can see, you know, all of your fields that are in Moisture Manager. You can see the soil moisture status of each field. And then you can also see the actual probe and all of the different moisture levels at each sensor on that probe. And so you can see, okay, we've got a lot of moisture at the surface, but in the subsurface, you know, we don't have very much moisture. And so we can even dig in further with a chart like this, where we can see the levels of moisture at each probe. And you can see as the crop grows, as the roots hit certain levels, they start uptaking moisture from different levels on that probe. So early in the season, they're not going to be hitting that, you know, that sensor at 40 inches. But as it grows and matures, it's going to start drawing water down. But then as it gets towards senescence, it stops taking up water. And then you can say, you can pinpoint the point in the season when, okay, it's not taking up any more water, so it's starting to mature, and that gives you an idea of when harvest is going to start.